Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Aisha Evans, CEO at Zoox, and this is Jesse Levinson, co-founder and CTO, has been here since basically the beginning, yeah? All right, Zoox turning 10, can you believe it?
Yes.
Anyway, we're going to chat about the journey the company has been over this last decade, and we'll get into some of our biggest wins, some of our challenges, lessons learned, and also share some predictions on the road ahead. This is a vibrant industry. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick note that if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section. And of course, if you're interested in checking out any open jobs at Zoox, please feel free to scan the QR code on the screen throughout the event. All right, let's get into it. Hey, congratulations. A lot of people try in this valley and nothing happens. We only talk about the successes. So how has the journey been?
Well, we haven't quite succeeded yet, but hopefully we're on our way. It's been an incredible journey. I feel extremely lucky to get to work on something this interesting and this important for this long with so many great people. It is really the privilege of a lifetime.
Cool. Okay, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but I'm still going to ask you. Biggest lessons learned, biggest surprise?
Well...
And from day zero.
Yeah. So I think, when we started the company, we knew it was going to be extremely hard. Mm-hmm. Lots of people, lots of time, lots of money. But it's been harder than we expected. And it's been profoundly more expensive than we would have predicted. So when Tim and I started Zoox in 2014, we were thinking this was going to take hundreds of millions of dollars and, could even be $1 billion. And that sounded like a lot of money in 2014 for two people who hadn't done anything like this before. It's still a lot of money. I mean, it's still a lot of money. But it turns out that to actually, build a whole vehicle from the ground up and test it and make sure it's safe and complies with all the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards and the crash tests, and then build a whole, firmware all the way up to AI stack and a safety case around that, and then, the product and the operations, and put the whole thing together, and then, scale that. It's obviously a lot more than hundreds of millions of dollars. And so that's definitely been a bit of surprise. In retrospect, it feels like we should have known that. It's maybe kind of obvious.
And you know what I say to you? Every time you say that, what do I say?
If we had known that, yeah. And it's true. If if somebody said, hey, this is going to be many billions, maybe even double-digit billions, do you want to go start that company? Be like, no, that's a terrible idea. Mm-hmm. Because who's going to fund it? And, and so I think the thing that's interesting 10 years in is, on the one hand, it's kind of amazing that we still exist, that we're, putting our robo-taxis on public roads. We've been doing that for a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. They're doing great.
They're cute, aren't they?
They look great. Mm-hmm. Very close to putting customers in them. So that's super exciting. Now, if you had asked me in 2014 what would be happening in 10 years, I would have been wrong, because I would have said, well, either we won't still exist because it was too hard, didn't get enough money, whatever, or, we're actually out commercially in a few places. I wouldn't have expected where we actually are, which is we've made great progress, we're really close, but still don't have quite the product out, because I would have been like, who's going to fund us for 10 years to not have a product? But when you think about the market opportunity and the impact of what we're building, it kind of makes sense, right? It's an incredibly hard problem, but if you can solve it, you can create tremendous value in the world. Mm-hmm. And so, we've been able to make enough progress along the way that it is actually worth doing this. And now people are starting to realize that at a larger scale, which is really cool.
That's really awesome. So I'm sure you have the question in reverse.
So, we started with nothing, and it was hard to hire people at the beginning because, crazy company, a little bit of money. And then over time, we were able to hire people who had a little bit more of a, track record and, families and bills to pay and so on. When you joined us in 2019, so about 5.5 years ago, what made you decide to actually say yes to us? Because we had a lot of competition. Lots of people were trying to hire you. Plus, you had a great job at Intel. What made you finally decide? Okay, this is the thing I want to do. And then, how do you feel about the last 5.5 years?
So when I first got the call, I mean, I've said that inside the corporation, I was like, are you kidding me? No. First of all, this sounds extremely hard, and I had a little bit of exposure to the industry because of Intel and Mobileye. But I was like, no, I don't think so. I told the recruiter, thank you, I really appreciate it, but all the blah, blah, blah. But then I talked to a few people, and the mission is incredible. I mean, it's something that still gives me goosebumps to this day. I had also decided that I wanted to work, if I was gonna, I mean, the movie at Intel, I knew it, I knew what we needed to do. It was hard, there were lots of challenges, there still are. But I was like, I wanna work on something that's really impactful. I want to work with people I can do business with, I enjoy, because these things are hard, and it's not measured in terms of when things are easy. You really ask yourself, when things are hard, am I going to be able to be with these people? Are we going to be able to figure it out? And a few people reminded me that those were the things that were interesting to me. So then I met a bunch of the board members, the Lauries and the Heidis and the MCBs and the Carls, and I was like, oh, okay, serious people. And then we walked around Chess for a couple hours. I don't know if you remember. I left my purse at the reception, and then we walked around. And basically, I was like, looks pretty serious. Like they're truly going after this mission. A little bit too ambitious on timelines and all that, but that's normal. We can deal with that. And then we walked around GA. And I think it was a VH6A at the time, was being worked on. I don't know if it was staged or not, but it looked very serious.
It was actually,
somebody was doing work,
yeah. It was real work.
I've never said this to Aaron, but Aaron Rosekind was doing something. He had his safety glasses. And at that moment, I could imagine a bunch of them running around and picking people up. I'm a soccer mom, so, I was a mommy Uber for a long time. And I was just like, yeah, let's go. I fell in love. And the journey has been wonderful. It's been tough. I think that you're probably the person I know the most now, outside of my direct family, because of all the time we spent together, all the discussions, all the figuring ourselves out of challenges. I love the crew. The fact that the mission is something we don't even discuss here. We don't put the values on T-shirt because we live them every day. It's been great. I've learned a ton. Hopefully I've contributed a little bit. And I cannot wait to have these robo-taxis out in the wild with people who we don't know at all, taking them and getting to the point where maybe Zoox even becomes a term.
I think you've contributed more than a little bit. I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be around anymore if it weren't for
I don't know about that. It takes a team.
We've had some close calls. What has your biggest learning been at Zoox because you obviously had such a wonderful career. You'd run really large teams, ship billions of dollars of complicated hardware and software all over the world. So you came into Zoox knowing a lot more than many of us knew when you joined. But what has been your biggest learning or surprise over the last 5 years?
One was a professional one. It's hard to build a company. I was known at Intel for being a little bit of a rebel and complaining about the bureaucracy and the processes and the this and the that. And I had a freak out moment about 2 weeks in. I was like, uh-oh. I had a one-on-one with myself, and I'm like, wow, the thing I complained about, I have to be part of building it. And I've never built one. And so how am I going to do that? But you know how it is. Once you realize what sickness you are, you have a chance at the medicine at least. So I was like, okay, let's figure that out. On a personal related to leadership and professional, I've surprised myself. I'm a little bit more adaptable than I thought I was going to be because I learned how to meet people where they're at before you move forward. And my coaches told me I needed to do that. I was like, yeah, whatever. No, that's not what's happening. What I say is happening. But it's been actually pleasurable to go through that leadership journey and to still be learning. I mean, you know how we both feel. If you're not curious, if you're not asking why, if you're not learning, maybe you might as not well be alive. Yeah. So. We've taken a little bit of a trip down memory lane, right? Let's talk about the next decade. Lots of exciting stuff happening. And at least for me, I see, first of all, it's nice that the industry has consolidated a little bit. There are a few of us. we live in San Francisco, the San Francisco area. So obviously we see, yes, I'll say it, Waymos, congratulations, well done, keep it up out there. Anybody can ride in one. But we also know it's a huge market. So yeah, we're coming. What do you think will be happening this next decade?
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, right? Because finally people are realizing like robotaxis are real. I mean, even 5 years ago, it was like, well, maybe, maybe not. You know, every couple of years there was like some hype, and then it was like, oh no, this is too hard. Oh wait, it's coming. And now they're actually, you know, out there for people to use. You know, it's going to be an interesting decade because, you know, you have to make these things. They don't you don't wake up one morning and all of a sudden there's a million robotaxis. But I think, you know, seeing in major cities over the next several years, it starts to become normal for there to be vehicles driving without a driver. And then what we're particularly excited about at Zoox, of course, is our take on it, which is not just removing a driver from a car that's been retrofitted with some computers and sensors, but creating a new type of transportation, a new vehicle experience that's really optimized for riders and was never designed for a human driver. So you can make a car and then you can, you know, either have the steering wheel do this or maybe even remove the steering wheel at some point, but it's still a car. And so what we've been doing at Zoox for the last decade is building what we think kind of, you know, comes after the car, which is a robotaxi that was designed for that experience, for the safety, the reliability, the redundancy, you know, the battery size, so you can drive all day and all night on a single charge, these kinds of things. And so I think you're going to start to see that become more normal. And, you know, our prediction is that other companies eventually will also decide that that's a great thing to do. So, you know, for us, the question is, can we take that head start we have on that platform and kind of capitalize on that? But we do expect that to be, that general concept to become more prevalent over the next decade because it just makes too much sense from first principles.
It's truly built for rider experiences, isn't it? I mean, every time I ride, I'm reminded of that, and I can't wait to see sort of how people use it as an extension of themselves in their own space. And I'm pretty sure they'll be doing stuff in that robotaxi, that good legal stuff that we haven't even thought about yet. Well, looks like we have some great questions that are coming in from the audience, so we'll take some time to answer a few of those. Do you want to do what we do at Weekly All Hands? And, alternate?
Let's
Yay, there we go. Go.
All right. All right. Do you want to start and then I'll go next?
All right.
Oh, they're moving around.
They're moving around. Okay. What was the inspiration for the final design of the vehicle? Well, you definitely have to answer that.
It was essentially like, you know, before we had cars, there were carriages. And the interesting thing with carriages was that people would sit facing each other because that's a much nicer, I mean, like, it's not like I'm, you know, not talking to each other that way.
Let me see how far you can turn that neck. Come on.
And so we went back to that, right? We said, hey, you know, how do people want to spend time together in a space? And it is facing each other, being able to have a conversation. By the way, even if you're taking one alone, it's nice to have that room rather than just be staring at a seat right in front of you or a dashboard. And so we kind of, you know, we're freed of the constraints of a car where you had to have, obviously, the seats facing the same way for crash safety and driving and pedals. And so that's really what inspired us. And then, of course, you know, it's been 100-ish years since carriages, or a little more. So, you know, there's some new nice stuff that aren't, you know, you don't have in carriages. You don't really have 4-zone, you know, heating and air conditioning in a carriage. The sliding doors and so on. But that's really what we were trying to do, is create the best possible environment for 1 to 4 people to enjoy their time while they're going somewhere.
Lovely. Your turn?
Isn't it your turn? I'll ask you, and then there we go. See, okay. How do you see Zoox contributing to the reduction of urban congestion and pollution?
Well, we're electric, so that's. By the way, that's not perfect. I wish we were solar. So there are steps but it's a good step in a good direction. It really comes down to volume. At scale, what we hope is that we're not. I mean, what is it? 2.1 cars roughly for U.S. families, yeah. So I know that every time we go to San Francisco, you know, every other week or so for drive review, and I always have a quick one-on-one with myself again, and I go, do I drive or do I have somebody drive me? Because I'm thinking about parking, I'm thinking about all these things. So as we're successful as an industry, basically it'll be mobility on demand. When I'm using it, great. But as soon as I'm done using it, somebody else is using it. So we'll be helping because there will be less it'll be less vehicles roaming around. It'll be more efficient from a parking standpoint, since again the goal is to be ride after ride after ride. So all of these things, there will be less things. Now it won't be perfect because we still have to make them, and that takes also pollution. But it is what it is. It's at least better than the current state. So I am really imagining a time, as we do. Some people have jets, but most of us ride commercial airplanes, and when I'm not in that seat, somebody else is in there, and we think that will help the environment, and that will help also congestions and frankly the city landscape. All right, what is your philosophy behind balancing safety and speed to market?
It's a pretty easy answer, because you really just have to get the safety right, and you want to get to market as fast as you can. But if we think about it as a trade-off, then the wrong things are going to happen. And so we've been very consistent at Zoox that we have to have an incredibly high bar for whatever operational design domain or sort of geofence you put the robot or robots in. We have to be better than humans, and the amount better, we're increasing that over time. But we really put years and years of effort into how do you build that comprehensive safety case? How do you take all the data from our L3 testing and all the simulations we're doing, and then sort of systems engineering style, STPA analysis, and put that together into a comprehensive safety case that really quantifies risk of collisions, injuries, and fatalities, and make sure we're following best known practices in the industry, ISO 26262 for, automotive. We've also looked a lot at aviation and medical devices and aerospace, because there's some of all that in what we're building. Mm-hmm. And then the question is, how quickly can we achieve those targets? So when we talk about speed to market, it's how fast can we achieve those targets rather than the other way. And I think we've done a pretty good job culturally here. Everybody's on the same page there. And there have been times where we haven't gotten something out when we wanted to because we haven't been meeting our targets. And when that happens, we put our thinking hats on and say, hey, how do we, what can we do differently here? Sometimes that might be days, weeks, sometimes it's been months. We don't want it to be months. When that happens, we say, well, what could we have done better? How can we improve? But there's never a debate about, well, maybe we just, compromise a little bit of here and there, and maybe it's fine. We don't do that.
I'm remembering, was it Super Bowl this year or was it last year?
It was this year, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Super Bowl morning. We had one of those
meetings. It was a Zoom call on
a
Sunday morning. Yeah.
And we had to make one of those calls. That's not a balance, right?
Yeah.
All right.
If you could design a robotaxi feature purely for fun, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, this is not the right question for me. I am not the fun person in this. Yeah, you're enjoying this. Oh, I got to come up with an answer. I don't know. I think I would like to be able to watch movies. I know that's a very controversial topic at Zoox. I've said it. Sorry, design team and experience team. But the question was not for Zoox. It was for Aisha. Okay. And I could see myself. I mean, that's ideal. I don't have to talk to anyone. It's just me. Basically, it's an extension of what I do sometimes on Sunday morning. Read a book but then I can also take some time and see what's around me and all that.
You can use your iPad? Or
no. I'm lazy.
Where does the screen go?
I don't. That was the question. Was not what do you want? It's what
I want.
I'm
asking where would you? We'll put.
I don't know. I work here. There's no space to put the screen. That's why they said if I wanted a fun feature.
Right.
You've been here since the beginning. You figure out where to put the screen. Yes. Okay, so that's what I would like. I'm sorry, I'm boring.
That's okay. No.
All right. Congratulations to everyone at Zoox on achieving significant tangible milestones. Thank you. We appreciate that. Could you share any details on your future roadmap, immediate goals versus 2 to 5 year roadmap?
Well, we can't share everything, but we'll do our best. So immediate goals, what we're working on right now is getting our robotaxi onto the Strip in Las Vegas. So we're driving near the Strip up to 45 miles an hour on some pretty complicated routes. Mm-hmm. But we haven't put the robotaxi on the Strip itself, so we're very hard at work on that. That's our next milestone. And the second half of that, San Francisco, right? So you also see our L3 test vehicles driving around San Francisco, but you haven't seen our robotaxi driving in San Francisco. That's also happening in our next milestone. So both of those coming up soon. We still have a little bit more work to do on all the safety validation, but we're very close. And we just can't wait to see the robotaxis in those two places. 2 years from now, well, we'll be in real commercial operation. We'll be offering a service that's genuinely useful for people in at least those two cities, and we have a couple more that we've announced that we're exploring, Austin and Miami. And the idea would be that, if you're lucky enough to be in those cities, that hopefully Zoox is your favorite way to get around. Yeah. And then 5 years, more cities, and then more capabilities, things like highway driving. I don't know about snow in 5 years, but maybe we'll think about that. It's on the agenda, but 5 years we'll see. But yeah, that's what to look forward to.
Jesse, from a technical perspective, because it's addressed to you, so you get it
so
again.
So much for alternating.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. If it's a technical question, they think they need to ask you.
Yeah, maybe we'll mess with them. I
I had to. The comms team right now is like, did she just say that? Yes, I did. All right, Jesse, from a technical perspective in 2014, what did you think would be the biggest challenge when building a new type of autonomous vehicle? In 2024, what was actually the biggest challenge?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
So I think, in 2014, it was like, well, okay, how do you build a software stack that can handle whatever? And, what AI and all this stuff, like, that has been very hard, obviously. What I think has been a little bit harder, or at least similarly hard, and maybe in 2014 we didn't fully appreciate this, is the alternate half, which is what we call the safety case. So you have to do two things, right? Besides building the actual vehicle part, which is lots of work and hundreds of people. But let's say you've figured that out, which I think we have at this point. We're still improving it and iterating on it.
Yeah,
but like the thing works. It's a great vehicle. So you have to make it drive itself in wherever and whatever happens. But then you also have to prove that actually works well enough, right? And it turns out that second half is in some ways as hard and maybe even harder than the first half. They also feed into each other because the pipelines and the metrics you used to evaluate whether you're safe enough go back and feed into the development on the software and AI side. But building that safety case that says, it's not enough to be like, well, we built this amazing AI and I don't know, it seems like it's probably pretty good, and we trained it on lots of data and hopefully it works, and like our safety drivers, they don't take over too often, so let's just see what happens. Like, that is not a way to build a robotaxi and deploy it safely in cities, right? You need to do a ton of system engineering and validation and really quantifying those risks and burning them down. And so it's not that in 2014 we didn't know that we needed to do it, but we hadn't really thought through, like, what are all those pieces? How do you put them together, and how much work is that? So that's been, I think, a learning, and that is one of our biggest challenges now. But it's also so exciting when you start doing that you can sort of iterate, turn that crank, and show that you can go to more and more complicated geofences, handle more complexity of sort of agent density and scenario types. And that's where we are now, and that's a really fun place to be.
So you're saying counting interventions is...
Don't recommend. I mean, you can. It's not that there's no signal there. There is some signal, but that ain't going to get you all the way
necessary, but certainly far from sufficient. Yeah.
All right. Next question. Aisha, you've been in tech for a long time. What was the biggest adjustment going from a major tech company like Intel to a startup like Zoox?
Lots of resources at Intel. Here, you end up doing a lot of different things. Building the company and everything that comes with that, the culture and so on. But it was also nice to have the opportunity to do that. But I would say access to the resources. And sometimes, you turn around and it's like, well, nobody's coming. I have to do it myself, or we have to do it ourselves. So that's been, but it's also been fun and freeing. And you, after a long time in the industry, you sort of remember all of the things you don't like, and you get an opportunity to make them different, which frankly has been a privilege. I've enjoyed it. Hopefully I didn't change too much.
Well, you changed something for the better. I don't think you've changed anything for the worse.
I don't know about that. Just maybe one thing, but that's okay.
I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, we can talk about it afterwards. All right. So how can Zoox navigate traffic and actually add value to a rider to get in a Zoox versus get in their own car?
Well, a few things. So when you're driving, first of all, you can't be doing something else. So people like driving. I like driving on 280 when there's not traffic. Like,
it's a beautiful highway.
That's actually really fun. But a lot of your driving, maybe not so much fun. So you have to be paying attention to the road, or at least you certainly better be. And then B, you can only be looking at one place at a time, right? So, generally we're looking forward. Sometimes we check our mirrors, turn around. But, the robotaxi has sensors on every corner of the vehicle, looking everywhere all the time. And so we can navigate even complex scenarios much more safely than even an attentive human, let alone a distracted human, and give people their time back. And what's interesting is, as you get more and more robotaxis on the road, you'll also be able to increase the efficiency of our roads. It turns out that, this is a fun fact, humans have to leave a lot of buffer between ourselves because we're not that great at driving, we're not paying attention, and we can't react that quickly. And so if you look at a freeway at maximum throughput, if you take an aerial photo of a freeway at the most possible cars you can put through per second, it turns out that 92% of the pixels of your freeway are just empty space, and 8% are the cars. Because if you think about the buffer you need in front and to the left and the right behind you, so that's really inefficient. But over time, if we can get that to be automated, then you'll be able to put more vehicles in the same amount of road and still increase safety. So that'll be another win for society as well.
Yep. And there are times you want to drive, and there are times you just want to be transported from point A to point B, because the getting there is not the main activity. That's just a tool, basically. So.
Okay, why does Zoox believe in L4, and is L5 on the horizon?
So Jesse spent a lot of time going over the safety case, and that safety case is within a certain ODD. There are still things also that we need, like a 3D map and a representation of the world according to what our sensors and what our compute will consume. That's why we say L4. So we are geofence. We don't think, and I know others do so I know it's LinkedIn, you'll have lots of comments, but L5 is really unconstrained. You can drive anytime, anywhere. Any geofence with essentially zero manual supervision, zero human supervision, and that's a really high bar that we think it will take a long time to achieve. So that's why we believe in being geofence, and it also works for our business model, right? Because then you also know where your target demand is. Okay. Curious on what studies may have been done around the seating configuration and how consumers may have been integrated into the thought design to be okay with sitting backwards.
Great question. So we've done a lot of research on that. And again, going back to that carriage, so people used to do that all the time. Actually, they still do in London taxi cabs. They do it on trains. And it is true there's a small percent of people that really don't like sitting backwards, although we found that in our vehicle, even some of the people who think they don't like sitting backwards actually do just fine. I'm one of them, by the way. I don't like sitting backwards. And everything else being equal, I still slightly prefer sitting forwards, even in the Zoox vehicle. But I've gone on pretty long journeys now in the Zoox vehicle backwards, and it's totally fine for me. That doesn't mean for everybody. But essentially, there's a very small percentage of people, especially since you have the big windows, you can see the horizon. It's very grounding, right? And so we found that only an extremely small fraction of people who sit backwards feel like they don't really prefer that, or at least have a real issue with it. And we are working on ways, if people do have a strong preference, to try to bias that so that they're going in their preferred direction. But yeah, we've done quite a bit of research, and we've also given many thousands of rides to non-Zoox employees over the last 5-ish months since we got our CPUC permit to put friends and family in the vehicle. And we do surveys and we get a lot of feedback, and it's been really great. It's not perfect, right? Not everybody thinks everything's amazing. We even make people rate us on a 1 to 5 star scale. It's a little biased because you're still our friends, right? So it's not.
I don't know. My kids didn't give me a 5. So.
Yeah, I know. But our average is 4.8. So your kids are harder critics than the average rider so far, and that includes about 50% of people sitting backwards. So we're feeling good so far, but definitely something to think about.
Great. I'll ask you again.
Another one. Okay.
Jesse, what advice would you give yourself in 2014 starting on this journey?
Well, be patient, which I think, on balance, I kind of have been. But, there are times where you're like, what are we doing? Like, this is so hard. Is this reasonable? And, sort of knowing that, it'll... Not that we could have known in 2014 that it definitely would have been okay, but, just sort of keeping that perspective. I think, I definitely didn't appreciate how many different things would have to come together to really make this successful. I mean, on some level I did. It's not like there were entire things that I had zero idea about, but there were lots of things that I had almost zero idea about. And so when you grow a company, trying to find that right balance of like when you invest in which parts of the company, we've made it work. Like it's not a disaster, but there are definitely times where it's like, you're building out HR in the beginning, like, I guess that's recruiting. We need to hire people. And it's like, no, there's actually a lot more than that. That's really important. Or it's like, we have to solve this hard AI problem. Let's go hire a bunch of AI people. Fair, but like, what about the infrastructure and the QA and the firmware and all these things? And again, it's not like in 2014 I didn't sort of know that on some level, but it's one thing to know that it's a thing, and then it's another to have actually been through it and like seen the pain and the challenges. So yeah, definitely accumulated a little bit of wisdom over the last decade, hopefully even more over the next decade to come.
I'm surprised you didn't say resilient.
I mean,
because it's hard, right? I mean, if somebody's starting something, they think that it's going to be easy, and because everybody watches the show I haven't watched yet,
Silicon Valley.
Yeah. But you had to be resilient.
I did. The reason I didn't say that is I'm kind of weird, but like I think I kind of, even in 2014, I sort of was that in a certain way. Like, I didn't think this was going to be easy. I mean, it's even harder than I thought, but like, it sounded incredibly hard. Like, it sounded like almost ridiculously hard. So I think before starting, like, it took me a few months to decide to actually do this as a company. And part of that process for me was just accepting that it was going to be incredibly hard. There was a very reasonable chance that it wouldn't work for a variety of reasons. And then just to be okay with how strange this adventure was going to be.
Yeah. Well, I admire how resilient and consistent. I mean, it's almost eerie. So I think it must have been rooted in being very clear about the why.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people sometimes are not clear about the why, and I would say, watching a lot of founders, you and others in the Valley, making sure that you know your why is really important, and I thought you guys did that well.
Thank you. It is one of the most important things. I mean, it's not. Sometimes you can get lucky and you can pivot and come up with something else. But if you know why you're doing something, and the why should not be just to make a lot of money. I mean, if you can make money, that's helpful because it helps to raise money and build a viable business, and like it's great. But if that's the only thing that you're looking for, you're probably not going to get it. And so at Zoox, one of the things that's helped us survive this long is we had a very clear reason of why were we doing this? Why did the world need something like this to exist? Why was our approach sensible, even if it was very hard to pull off? And that's been a very grounding and motivating force that we've really held and been consistent about for the last 10 years.
Good.
All right, what accessibility features does Zoox offer to ensure safe and convenient transportation for individuals with disabilities, such as blind passengers while operating autonomous vehicles?
Thank you. Great question. So it's a spectrum, right? At the end of the day, you always have to think about your business model. Our business model is to sell rides, and we will do our best to offer rides to everybody. Now, in terms of disabilities, it's also a spectrum. So, for example, even we get a lot of criticism for this first vehicle doesn't support wheelchairs, for example. Well, this is sort of the introductory product. We're already hard at work on the next one, and but even that, there's a spectrum in the different types of wheelchairs you have to offer, and so on. So it's on our roadmap. It's something we think about clearly. In terms of, for example, blind passengers, we already have Braille in terms of some of the signals. So our experience team has done a lot of research in this space, has really consulted with all of the different communities to understand what's important to them, what their expectations are. And the first product won't be fantastic from that standpoint, but it does offer a lot already, and we'll keep adding onto the roadmap as we go.
By the way, you might not even know this yet because I only found out an hour ago.
Oh.
But
what did they tell you then, Tom? No, I'm teasing.
Tomorrow, we have a 104-year-old woman coming for a friends and family ride.
That is awesome.
Isn't that amazing?
104.
She'll be here, 104 years old, grandmother of one of our employees. And it'll certainly set a record for oldest
I want a
robotaxi. Yeah, we're going to go. That was the question.
We're going.
Well, like, can we go meet her? And I was like, absolutely.
Yes.
That's amazing.
For once, we asked for the selfie.
Yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. That warms my heart. All right, robotaxi versus ownership. Any factors that led to the robotaxi decision? I think they meet the fleet ownership.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'll be honest. Actually, one of probably the most exciting insight for me when I was first talking to Tim about the idea of Zoox, again, way back in early 2014, was it wasn't just, okay, new vehicle and it's like, carriage seating and symmetrical and like sensors on the corners. Like, that's all wonderful. But the thing that blew my mind was like, if you have this technology, you don't have to sell cars anymore.
Which is a tough business,
right?
By the
It's
way.
really hard to sell cars. I mean, very few companies have actually pulled that off. The ones that have, congratulations, that's super impressive. But it's really hard to make money selling cars because you have to spend so much money on the tooling and the factories, and then you sell it and you hopefully make a one-time profit, although, that's dicey. And then that's it. And it's just not an efficient use of resources because, again, people on average only use their cars 4% of the time. It's about an hour a day out of 24. That means, again, 96% of the time your car is sitting around taking up space and depreciating. So the really incredible thing about robotaxis, besides all the advantages to safety and experience and all that, is you don't have to sell them. And that means that you can amortize the cost of the vehicle over people using it and paying for it all day and all night long, which means you can lower the cost to the user and still make money, even though the vehicle itself costs more than a regular car. If you think about how much does it cost per ride, it's really not that much. And so that's the really powerful insight to me is it's not just, okay, we created this new vehicle and it's awesome. It's that as a society, if we can share those resources, so when you're using it, that's great. When you're not using it, somebody else is paying for it. And you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to park it. You don't have to pay insurance. It's not depreciating. So at least, well, it's depreciating
For
in
the
general
company,
for us,
yeah.
right? But not for you as the person using it. And it's just a vastly better use of resources environmentally and economically. And that was key to why we decided to start Zoox. If it weren't for that insight, I personally would not have decided to do this because I would not have thought it made sense.
It's a shared electric fleet, basically.
Yeah.
And we're selling rides in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah. All right. What tools and or recent academic advances would accelerate Zoox development or deployment?
Well, you can't have a discussion in tech and in the Valley without talking about Gen AI and all of the work that's happening in that space. And it's been it's been helpful. It's been helpful from a productivity standpoint in areas like, for example, simulation, in QA, in just this is the big data problem at the end of the day when you really put it in its simplest form. But it's also been helping us in terms of the stack itself. The machine learned generated trajectories are pretty darn good, and frankly taking over. So I think it's going to give us some speed, and it's going to help us manage the scale of the data. It's also going to allow us to experiment a lot quicker, which is really good. So I think that's really the major one. Anything else you can think about outside of that?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's really like, both online and offline
Yeah.
making a huge impact. I think the offline is even in some ways more interesting, and
Yeah.
everybody thinks about, okay, better machine learning algorithms, a little bit, moving in the direction of end to end, although we don't believe in going all the way there, but
No.
partially there. That's really cool. But what it can do offline, right?
It's
For
been
the
awesome.
scenario simulation, QA, triaging, like it's really already starting to be transformative, and we're just scratching the surface.
Awesome. With the vehicle being bidirectional, how do I know which seat will be the ones facing forward, backward when I get into a Zoox?
Well, you can probably tell based on which direction the road is, right? So if you get picked up on the side of the road, like it's gonna go that way. So you should know. But again, like I mentioned earlier, we are looking into, for people who have a very strong preference, is there a way that we can give them some extra information if necessary?
Good.
Okay, how do you see people, culture, people motivation, and perseverance in Zoox, given there is a lot of pushback in general, than support or encouragement financially as well as technology?
The mission is the boss. It's sometimes I joke and say we're even maybe a little cultish about our mission. We have a common language. We're very clear about our responsibility from the fact that it's a safety critical product. But it anchors around the mission, and the fact that it's a great opportunity, I don't think anybody disputes. I mean, it's a market that exists today. It's just being served differently. But at the end of the day, the mission is the boss, and when there's a challenge or when there's an opportunity, sitting down cross-functionally, you can be in one single meeting and you have, I don't know, somebody from battery, somebody from motion control, somebody from supply chain, and we're all solving the same problem and attacking it and saying, what do we do? What are the best options? Why is this happening? Why is this not happening? But I'll go back to our values. We're mission-driven. We are inquisitive. We trust each other, and we're one Zoox. Last but not least, we're not building anything else, at least not these days. Maybe in the future, we will earn the opportunity for an adjacent product line or adjacent market. But everybody that walked through these doors works on one thing: building this robo-taxi, making it safer than human, deploying it, and delighting our customers with rider experiences they didn't even know were possible. All right, I think you deserve the final question.
I don't know about that, but that does seem
You've
to be
been
where
here
we are. Yes.
since day zero. So, and I certainly would not have joined at day zero. So there we go. Jesse, what advice would you have for other tech founders?
Don't listen to other tech founders. That's my advice. No, I don't know. Look, a couple of things. So we kind of touched on this earlier, but asking why is really important. But in general, to kind of extrapolate, ask yourself hard questions and encourage other people to ask you hard questions and make sure that you can answer them. And if you can't, that's okay, but then try to come up with an answer. If there's a hard question that's like kind of existentially important for you to be able to answer and there isn't a good answer, you should not be comfortable with that. You should challenge yourself. I think a lot of people start something and don't really think through all the implications. Is it possible? Does this make sense? Is there a reason why nobody else has done it?
Are people going to want it?
Do people really want it? I mean, in Silicon Valley, you have a lot of smart people working on really cool things that people just don't want. Now, you don't always know for sure. One of the nice things about Zoox is we're pretty sure people want to move around cities and have point-to-point mobility on demand because, ride-hailing is
a thing.
Proven that even if you were skeptical in the first place. So we have a little bit less of that concern. But again, just, encourage people to ask you hard questions. Don't shy away from them. Don't be too afraid if you don't have a great answer right away.
Be aware.
But then take some time and come up with a good answer. And if you really can't come up with an answer that is reasonable to a valid question, you might want to think about doing something else. But if you have good answers and you believe in yourself and you believe in your answers from first principles, then you just got to work your ass off and not listen to the people that don't believe in you. So that's that balance, right? Like you want to listen to people and you want to be challenged, but if you believe in your answers, despite really trying to take the contrary position, then you may be right and you should stick with it. And those are, I think, a lot of the best companies are a result of people doing things that most people didn't think were realistic. And sticking with it. Now, to be fair, most things that don't seem realistic don't pan out either. But that's the sort of challenge you have to sign up for if you decide to start a difficult company.
I love that transparent answer because that whole transparency thing is also at the foundation of everything, really. All right, well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. We're thrilled to be celebrating this milestone anniversary, 10 years at Zoox, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation. We have many goals ahead of us this next decade. We're hiring across all of our offices and in almost every function. So if you're interested in joining our crew, please take a look through the available job listings on our career page via the QR code on the screen and head over to the Zoox website. So thank you again and have a great rest of your week.